Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Flynn and I'm here with Mark Conlan. How are you, Mark?
Good, thanks. Thanks for having me along.
Thanks for coming up from Melbourne, is where
All
you're
that
based.
way, yes. It was a long flight.
Yeah.
A bit easier than getting from Ireland, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. And so you're an illustrator?
I am.
Freelance illustrator?
Yes.
So maybe you could tell us a little bit about like kind of what you do for those in the chat that might not know.
Sure. So I do kind of illustration from anything from kind of editorial across to advertising through to, I don't know, commission work to animation to kind of everything really. I suppose kind of as a creative you kind of have to be kind of across the board, kind of taking in as well what you can, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. And that's not a Melbourne accent. Where are you originally from?
I'm from Dublin, Ireland.
Dublin.
Yeah, so it's been nearly 10 years now since I've been there. So I lived in London for 6 years before coming to Melbourne.
Right.
So I've been in Melbourne just over 4 years now.
So is Melbourne home?
Melbourne's home now.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the moment. I'm sure if my mother and father are watching this, they'll love to hear that.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Oh no. And you have a dog, cool dog as well. We might bring that. Pickle?
Yeah, what a guy.
How's Pickle going?
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah.
He's great. He's like part of the studio now. Yeah, I'm
awesome.
sure everybody can see like his pictures and his videos all the time on Instagram.
Seen them on Instagram,
Yeah.
super cute. Maybe we'll have a sneak peek
Everybody
at the end.
gets a bit annoyed at him too. You know,
Nah,
like,
no one ever
"Show
gets
us the
annoyed.
work, not the dog.
I find that baby pictures tend to be people kind of like, oh, it's
really?
but dog
Have you had
pictures.
people unfollowing you and stuff, yeah.
Well, no, I don't post very much for that reason.
Safe.
I want to see someone else's kids. Welcome everyone. Hey chat. Yeah, it's good to see you guys. Ask questions as we go. We're probably going to spend most of our time in Fresco. We're going to check that out. But maybe we'll skim over very quickly. You went to MAX as well.
I did. It was great.
With Ben and some of the other insiders.
Yeah, and the gang here from Australia, the APAC group, should we say, not Australia.
Right.
Yeah, so it was a big group of us this year. But then overall, I think Ben talked on it earlier on, it was about 100, 120 insiders from globally.
It's madness, really,
huge.
Isn't it?
So we had like a special day this year. Was the first time we'd done it, that they had like a whole day organised at a venue, organised, and it, like buses that pick us up, tour buses, picked us up, gave us a little tour of Hollywood and kind of around there, and then we got dropped off a location, and we had some speakers that morning demonstrated a talk on Robin Eisenberg and I'm sure someone else as well. And then we did some like workshops that afternoon. We got to kind of touch on some of the new programs Adobe released, like Fresco and Aero, and kind of we on Lightroom, on Photoshop on the iPad. We got to kind of cross over as creatives as well, so it was really fun, and we had a nice evening then all together. So it was really good, and that was just before MAX. So it was pretty full on.
And then the show starts.
We had full MAX as well for a couple of days, so it was great. Yeah.
Very good. And what do you normally draw in? Like,
well, it kind of varies now. I think that like since the kind of iPad Pro has kind of come out, has really changed the game, I think, for a lot of illustrators, digital illustrators mainly.
Yeah.
Especially with kind of like, you know, Adobe Sketch was always a big thing for me, kind of working up a lot of kind of sketches, with cleaning up kind of notebook sketches and kind of send them across to clients through to Photoshop now being on the iPad is a big changer as well. I know Ben talked about it earlier on as well. And Fresco now, which is awesome as well. So it's between that and then on desktop it's mainly Photoshop. Yeah. Which I use a Wacom and kind of Photoshop, which is my main flow. And then this now is starting to creep in and actually create client work fully mobile, which is crazy.
Right. Are you always straight to digital? Do you draw by hand?
Everything's
sometimes?
tactile initially, yeah. So everything's kind of hand drawn, which I don't know. It's always an easier thought process. I think it's easier for me to kind of get something out onto a piece of paper rather than it being directly onto a screen. But like sometimes now, like if I'm doing a client project, I could do hundreds of sketches, and I find then I'm going in and kind of redrawing them in Adobe Sketch.
Right.
So I'm like, this huge amount of work there. So now I'm kind of like trying to draw directly into Sketch to save a lot of time. Yeah. But it's fine, you know. I mean, I don't know, I just like the idea of paper and pencil. It's just the whole original thing, but everything is becoming slowly more and more digital. Right. Yeah.
Cool. Very good. Tim Northey in the chat wants you to teach him how to draw, so we'll have a go at that.
Maybe later, Tim,
Yeah, we'll have a go. So why don't we bring up and show some of your work?
Yeah, for sure.
I'll have like a little bit of a look in here.
Yeah, for sure. Well, this piece I'm going to bring up is actually one that I created for MAX. And this was obviously, these are just kind of some rough thumbnails that I'd created here in Fresco. So this is kind of like part of my process. Everything is generally a sketch, and then I kind of try to bring into color a little bit quicker with kind of this kind of thumbnail kind of approach to it. Now these are quite finished. I'm quite clean generally at work because I find it quite easier to kind of flow onto the finished piece. So then I'd kind of come in here and I'd work up these compositions. So like just say I had 20 sketches, I'd kind of bring in just say the 6 of my favorite or 4 of my favorite. As you can see, these down the bottom are quite similar. I'm just trying to play with the composition a little bit more because I know I was kind of getting closer to a final result that I liked.
Right.
So yeah, I generally try to kind of work kind of roughly and work with the composition and colors and kind of see how they're working. Gives me a better kind of context of where I sit.
So is this the final color in your sketch, or are these like blue lines? Like, are these your sketch colors?
Yeah, no, this is like, lately actually I've been very limited. I've been kind of going back to one to two color palettes to kind of, I don't know, I think as more you kind of learn, the more you kind of can come back and kind of refine your palettes to kind of focus more on negative space and composition. I think it's like a new exercise for you to develop a little bit further as an artist.
Right.
So I think like working in one color actually makes you focus more on the elements and the kind of whole bigger picture of the piece rather than just an array of colors on an illustration.
Yeah.
So lately, I don't know, I think it's just been kind of the fun of the exercise and kind of getting good feedback from it too. Actually just working in one color has been something that I've been kind of exploring, I suppose. So this particular piece I knew I was going to create, so this little rough border you see here is kind of, it's a little bit sketchy, but it's meant to be a post stamp, so they're done really quickly. So I knew I was creating this kind of series of like travel stamps, and kind of I wanted to create this series, this 3-piece series that all kind of like, you know, we were traveling there, and that was the whole part of all the insiders coming together was like traveling there. So that was the kind of early concept of it, and then obviously bringing in the elements of Los Angeles that were, I suppose, iconic also. And then I wanted to animate it too, which I'll show you afterwards. I animated just very roughly, kind of like just as a little loop, just to kind of give it a little bit more character, I suppose.
Right.
But yeah, come back to your question with the color was, this is, yeah, just literally had this 2-color palette in my mind, so it was easy to kind of come in and just rough it out and explore it a little bit more.
So I mean, you say these are rough, but like this would be a final piece for me. Like there's already texture, and you've come back through with like the white to like take stuff out as well. And how long does it take you to do something like this when you say it's a sketch?
Yeah, like probably all of these 6 pieces together, probably about an hour.
Oh wow.
Kind of all together, all up, you know what I mean, kind of roughly. But then I kind of knew that I could take one of these and kind of it was almost there. I knew I just kind of had to bring it over to Photoshop to animate it.
Right.
So I kind of spent a little bit longer kind of refining the edges and kind of getting some elements. Now these are quite low res, so like unfortunately, like when you zoom in, you can probably see, you know, you can still see your textures, which is nice, but you can start to see the pixelation of the brushes. So generally, if I was going to animate these, I'd probably have to make it a bit bigger. So I'd probably work on one of these, refine it a bit, then bring it into a separate composition and kind of make it all a little bit clearer and easier to kind of, I suppose, have all the layers with a bit more clarity for animation, which makes your life a little bit easier later on.
Yeah.
So yeah, this was the little series, and then I'm just going to bring up another one that I worked on, which was kind of, again, just a build up on top of this, which is the same, but it is just a little bit more refined. So you can see the process again. The top row are all just those 3 that I kind of enjoyed, and I was like, okay, I think I can kind of do something with these a little bit more. And obviously constantly comparing them all side by side. And then the bottom, you'll see I've just kind of brought in a more clear kind of edge to kind of show myself a little bit more about how I can see the composition evolving. And obviously I was going to create a little bit more here to show you a little bit more about Fresco in the bottom right here, which is going to be closer to the final composition that I arrived at. So do you want me to start talking a little bit more about Fresco and kind of where we're at with the brushes?
Yeah, I think so. Like I've been playing around with Fresco quite a lot, but I think for anyone in the chat or watching online that might not have an iPad or might be looking at it, like it's some interesting differences, I think, mostly with the brushes.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's quite intuitive for anybody who's kind of used Photoshop or any of the mobile apps. It's quite, you know, you've got your brushes, you've got your erasers, you've got your transforming, you've got your layering, you've got your layer masks. You can, it's pretty great actually. But the beauty about it, I like it, is it's quite simple. They haven't tried to do too much with it as well at the same time. And I think as a creative, when there's too much going on in the program, it can be quite overwhelming. For people to learn, and also to kind of get stuck in and kind of have your flow. And like I know that everybody has a different kind of way of working. That you know, you get a new program and it's so overwhelming that you're like, oh my god, I have to learn something new. So there's a lot of people just don't learn a new program for that pure reason. But it's very similar. So if you've used Photoshop before, I think it's pretty intuitive.
Yeah, pretty easy to jump in.
And like there's a couple of big differences, like is the brushes, and then I can touch on it very quickly. So you've got like your 3 different brushes up in the top left here in this toolbar. One is your main pixel brushes here. And in this pixel brush, you can have all your brushes. You can literally, they've got an array of brushes here, which are all kind of, I suppose, created from Kyle Webster, who was the mastermind behind this program in the first place. And Kyle used to create brushes for Photoshop and used to sell them. And then now they're all free actually in Photoshop, so you can actually go in and get them all free. His collection, which is great. So I think he's put a lot of his brain into these kind of standard brushes here on the iPad, and then you can also store your favorites. So I've imported, which is great. I've imported a lot of my brushes from Photoshop that I use, and you can actually store them as your favorites. So it's great. So you can literally just have them on the go. So again, this helps with your process and your flow all the time. And then the other one is these. There's vector brushes as well now, which is here. So you can actually it's like Illustrator. You've got your vectors and the long, clean lines, and you can zoom into the lines, and it doesn't affect the quality of it whatsoever.
Yep.
I can't really show them side by side because this is. I can show you a new layer, and if we draw with a vector brush, you can see the difference in the clarity of the line. Can you see that there? That's like clearly vector.
Yeah. So before you were saying when you scale everything else up, everything else is going to be pixelated.
Absolutely. So
but
you can see the difference there. You see the rasterization of that versus that. So it's great. So I know a few illustrators actually use this now purely with vectors, which is great. So you've got that option as well as raster-based graphics, but obviously they all can't live in the same layers. You have to have separate layers, and they probably have to be exported separately.
That was my biggest question when I was at Max last year. When they came out, they said you can do vector and pixels, and I was like, how?
I think everybody thought.
I was very confused. I was like, okay, this is crazy, but it's an interesting way to tackle it.
It is, and I think it's
sense.
great, and it has to kind of live on kind of two separate pages, don't they? Really?
Yeah.
But it'd be interesting to see if they can develop them a little bit closer in the future. I don't know. If that's going to be possible. But the big feature about Fresco is the live brushes. I think you've seen these before, haven't you? And these are so you've got two different types. There is a water and there's an oil. So it's all about live brushes kind of means so be painting exactly how you would with the actual brush. So if you were actually doing watercolor brushing, you've got a lot of control of A, the amount of paint you put on the brush, and B, the amount of water that's in that ratio. So here, if we choose the watercolor brush, we can choose there's several different types of watercolor brushes. Say we pick the wash soft, and we've got our color. So then here you can actually choose all your colors, and you can store your recents as well. So everybody's kind of familiar with that setup. Down here then there's actually a little water control. So you see this water flow, it can actually show how much water you've added or subtracted from the brush. So if we go with not very much water on that, and just bring down the size of the brush, you can see the pigment's quite pure, and then you kind of layer it up and layer it up and layer it up, which is amazing. It's actually you can actually go in and work into that. And if I go in then and add a lot of water to that brush, you can see the difference here. It's pretty amazing, right?
It's pretty crazy.
You can see live the amount of water that's been pushed into that there. You can manipulate that there, and I can even go back in and add water into that there as well, which is pretty amazing. And as Kyle Webster always does in his demos, you can just put an eraser right through it too, which you just cannot do when you're painting as
right.
well. So
it's like a new dimension to watercolor,
which is amazing. I do a lot of that. I do a lot of kind of working in for negative space. So I tend to kind of work quite roughly, just say to form a shape, and then kind of come in and work around that to form the shape, to kind of give that kind of clean look without kind of working to that shape originally. And the reason why I do that is just to kind of allow the texture to kind of flow a little bit easier rather than kind of contriving yourself to that little shape in the first place.
Right, that's cool.
So it kind of gives me just a little bit more control over that shape initially.
Very
or
cool.
texture, should I say, more so than the shape. So they're all the kind of the new features, and obviously there's the oil brush as well that people can kind of go in and have a play with as well, which is really cool. Sorry, I'm at the vector brushes there. It's the same principle with the oil as well. You can kind of come in, you can control everything there as well, which is fantastic. And of course, there's lots of beautiful textures in all the brushes as well. So yeah, that's really exciting. I don't think there's anything quite like that at the moment out there with that input of the live effect in a brush.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think everybody's going to have a lot of fun playing around with that if they're not kind of doing a lot of cool work.
It is super fun even just to play around with.
And I think even for people who aren't creatives, I think people get a lot of kind of therapy out of kind of sitting down and kind of painting with those live brushes. There's something there, it's like the whole kind of colouring book process.
I know,
there's a lot to
exactly.
Yeah.
Steve was just asking, did you hand letter the fonts as well? So
I did.
Is that all done by hand?
Yeah, I did actually. I'm not renowned for kind of my typewritten, so I kind of tried to make it just kind of a bit quirky and a bit weird, so it's kind of I can kind of get away with it. So I find that a little bit hard, like a bit of a hard subject to kind of address is type, and there's a lot of people who do it really well, and it's not one thing I do well, but I don't know, I think it kind of works with my style.
It works for sure, yeah.
Yeah, so
super
I try
cool.
to get away with it as much as possible. Yeah.
Cool. All right.
Do you want me to show some of this kind of illustration?
Yeah.
I can probably even just show you how I kind of layer up kind of how I came about it. So with these here, there was a frame, and I was really conscious of kind of creating this frame. So Fresco is great because you've got I don't know if you can see my layer panel over here. It's great. It's just like Photoshop on the iPad now. It's got heaps and heaps of layers. So I literally have, so that's top and row, and then top and bottom row, and then you can go into each of them, and then you've got all your layers within each of those layer groups. So it's quite intuitive. So you can see at the bottom those two little dots that shows you that there's another layer outside, and you're in that layer.
So there's layers within layers.
Layers
there's
within
groups.
layers. Yeah, and then you can literally just go back to them as well. Or you can turn them on and off, as simple as that as well, which is great. So if I go into this bottom row, you can see I've got all my different compositions within this bottom row as well. I even have layers that are turned off. So then inside this again, I've got another layer group, which I keep all my layers in. I know Ben talked about this earlier on as well. It's so important to work in layers because, especially if you're kind of trying to be a little bit creative and kind of figure out things, it always gives you a chance to kind of go back without like affecting everything along the way.
Exactly.
So
non-destructive working, I think.
Exactly, and I think we've all learned the hard way as well. Right? You've been working on this one layer and you got to undo, and it's just a mess. But I knew I kind of wanted to create this kind of old school kind of frame style within this postage stamp, so I've kind of drawn this kind of little circle here just to kind of frame the composition.
And did you do that by hand?
Yeah, that's hand drawn. I just
so
did
much
the
control.
top. Oh, I don't know. I was kind of actually just saying how bad it was a second ago. It looks a bit shaky.
No way.
I actually did it before I came on because I knew my hand would be a bit shaky to do it while I was here. But if I was to actually create, so I've got my brushes set up here. I know people ask me about my brushes a lot, but I have my favorite set up here, and the pencil in Fresco is so good.
Oh, you've just favorited the ones that you use a lot,
Yeah,
so they're
so these
easy
are like
to...
my four I use. One's a custom brush, one's a pencil, one's this Kyle Webster brush, it's like a grain one, and the other one is these grain shaders that I use from
True Grit?
True Grit, that's it. They're great. I don't know if anybody knows about them, but they're fantastic. You can go on and they've got a huge supply, and they also have them for cross-platform, so for all your different mobile or desktop devices now as well. But anyway, for this I'll just use the pencil tool, which is really powerful, I think, and I've created a new layer, and I literally just want to create just like this bit of negative space out here where we can just kind of create a frame. Yeah, and then I generally try to just kind of be really rough with brushes just to kind of see how the texture is. And like I said, this pencil, I don't know, I've just really taken a shine into it.
Is this just a
It's
like
just
standard
a pencil, but it's just got that texture to it that's, I don't know, it's quite appealing, right? But also that's what I love about Fresco is you can turn the screen. Whereas Photoshop,
I was physically, I'll admit
really?
here, I was physically turning my iPad not that long ago, and then I thought, oh yeah, I can just do this.
It does make your life a little bit easier, doesn't it?
It really does.
It does, and Ben was talking earlier on about the pinch and zoom as well, which is fantastic as well, because you can kind of just, I don't know, work in. I've actually got so used to that now that when I'm drawing in a sketchbook, I will try to pinch and zoom.
You want to
sometimes,
pinch and zoom?
I'm just like, no, I didn't just do that. So I was talking about earlier on how I'll kind of draw a shape, and then I'll actually come back in with the eraser and try to actually clean it up. So like, I've just dropped that there. If I actually just do that quickly, so it actually just gives that kind of cleaner look. I know that line's a little bit off for anybody kind of scrutinize me for that. It just gives you that kind of a little bit more of a refined area.
Is that a common thing of your technique that you will do?
Yeah, I think so. And like it's a blessing and a curse because it can take a long time for me to kind of work to an area. But once I've kind of got that shape, the great thing about working digitally is that I can just duplicate that layer, and then once I transform that, I can just flip that horizontally or vertically, and then I can just put that down there.
Cool.
So once we save some time, sorry, hands are a little bit shaky. So if we pop that there, and then if I merge those two down on top of each other, we've got one side done now, and then just simply duplicate that again, transform it, and then flip it horizontally.
It's pretty cool. Nice,
and
fast.
Too easy, right? That's that done. So there's my little frame, and then kind of I've built up some elements, and I can merge that down so it's one. I've built up some elements inside this scene, kind of based on these previous examples, because I was kind of I know what I want. I just kind of have to change the composition around now to fit this shape. I just think that this shape in particular kind of drew your eye in a little bit more. But I'll drop in some of those elements. I've got them all in a layer group here. So you can see I've got them all kind of turned off here. But I can slowly start putting them on. Again, with my kind of brushes, I kind of have this kind of textural approach. But I can kind of show you how I created this with my brush. So I'll turn it off and just create a new layer. And I've got this brush here. And then I've got my blue selected, my opacity and the size of the brush. I can literally just come in. And the beauty about working with these as well, you have all your levels of pressure built in as well. So you can really get in and add that texture to that brush, which is fantastic. So you can really control the texture. And this is why I said I don't like to work to a certain shape, because I get to really put that shape or the texture down and then come back in and work to that shape. Again, with the clean line, come in and just... You know, I mean, I know it's not the exact shape that I had.
Yeah, very cool.
But that just allows me to dictate.
I love the way you
myself.
work back through. That's really cool. If anyone has any questions while we're going, we're probably around for another sort of 10 minutes. So now's the time, definitely.
Excellent. So anyway, yeah, just to be really quick about it, I then come in and kind of clean all that up. I'm sure there's ways that people have that are a bit quicker than this, but I find it's just the nicest way for me to control the natural texture of a brush and the way it's set up. So yeah, that's really rough there, you can see. So then I kind of do the same thing with my layers, and I'll build up a whole kind of hierarchy of layers through the structure. That's the initial one, and then we'll start with the background and work those ones in. So you can see this one, I've actually knocked back the opacity in that one so it sits. And this is like a few of the things I've kind of had to work out with working with one color. How do you put two layers of blue together without it looking just as one
Like
flat
really
layer?
flat, yeah.
So again, it's kind of controlling A, the texture, and B, a little bit of the opacity. So then that's working in. See, I've added that kind of higher level on top there, so you can kind of, it gives the indication of two different separate mountains to structure. And then again, I'll just add in. So there's our little palm tree. I had to add some whites over the top of that to give it some clarity where it's sitting. And then it was just a case of really just adding in some of the text, all separate again, of course. And again, I wanted to keep everything separate because when I go to animate, it's such a treat to have everything on separate layers, because the way I animate is like frame to frame in Photoshop.
Yeah.
So it just allows you that, like, each layer to kind of have its own properties then.
So when you sat down to illustrate this series, did you know that you were going to create an animation?
Yeah, I was hoping to. I was kind of like, how much time do I have?
Right.
You know yourself. But I did have it in my mind. I'd love to kind of animate them, and I had a rough idea of what I wanted to do. Again, it was kind of doing some thumbnails, kind of working at that. But I didn't really know exactly what I wanted the animation to do until the composition was finished, and I kind of knew what elements were there, and then I kind of had a good idea of what I was going to do with it. So yeah,
cool.
So that's pretty much most of the composition there towards the final composition that I did, and then I added this little Ferris wheel and a little kind of pier and a little roller coaster, because I knew they'd be fun to kind of animate along the way.
And so did you draw that with the pencil in white on its own layer?
Yeah.
So that's, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I can actually show you that. I've actually had them all in a little group. So that was quite simple. Everything you can see here, everything's on our own separate layers. If we zoom in a little bit, see outside the Ferris wheel was its own little circle, and then we've got everything on the separate layers, and then the whole inside structure is all done as well. And
So
again,
that's quite a lot of layers.
Yeah, there
in the
is.
end.
And you know what? It handles it really well, because if you think there's 6 different compositions here and they all have their own layer groups inside each other, and it's very smooth. But like most of them probably don't need to be separated in layers, but the reason why I did that was purely to create a bit quicker. I showed you guys how to duplicate this frame earlier on. It's a similar process, and in Fresco you can create a shape. So say you can actually use these selection tools as well. So they have, like Photoshop, they've got this cylindrical and the rectangular and the marquee tool as well, and the lasso tool that you can kind of select shapes. So that's great as well. So it allows you to kind of do those cleaner shapes rather than doing it all by your hand. So again, that's how I did that. And then everything has its own separate layers, because I knew if I was going to animate them, the roller coaster needed the layers and everything else as well. So yeah, so then, but naturally then I had to recreate all this in a little bit bigger scale and just give it a little bit more kind of definition for the graphics for animation.
Cool.
Yeah. So yeah, it's obviously it took a little bit longer than what I just showed you there, but that's kind of generally how I kind of work in the flow. But I think like Fresco is really great for the layer groups, and it just really allows you to kind of have everything really clean. I like to be kind of neat and tidy when I'm working. Just allows kind of the chaos to calm down a little bit and to focus purely on the creative rather than the madness going on there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how do you export that for?
Yeah, it's pretty simple.
animating?
So you can just literally just export them, publish and export, and you can export them all as a PSD and everything else as well. So you've got your export options. Oh, that was for Behance, was that? Yeah, sorry, I pressed the wrong one. Don't save. So if we export that, you can literally export whatever you want there for PSD or PNG or JPEG or anything else. And also they have this really cool time-lapse export. Do I have enough time to show you this?
Yeah.
Because everybody
we've
loves
got
this. Because you can then basically export the full video, and it'll basically show you how you worked.
Oh wow, I actually did not know that it had that feature.
Yeah, which is fantastic, right? So you don't need to do any screen recording or anything. It's just built in. Now you'll probably see everything in this because I've duplicated this and kind of built up again,
Right.
which is great. So it's got absolutely everything built into it, and it kind of gives you a good kind of idea of my process and my flow and how I work.
Look how efficient this is for Adobe Live. We'll just play that and we talk over the top of it. Yeah, this is how I work. Just watch this.
Gives something interesting going on in the background.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can actually see there, like the layering and masking is actually really, really powerful as well. And it's a great way for you to kind of look back and see your process too, I suppose, especially when you're learning a new program.
Right.
You can kind of get a good indication of how long you've been spending in one area. Again, here's like kind of creating a frame. Yeah, it's always kind of interesting to look back on it yourself. And I know, like personally, from sharing my work online, a lot of people love seeing your process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Be one of the most requested things, right? Like, how did you do this? And
Definitely.
How long did it take you?
Yeah, and
what
I think
did you use? All
people
that
are
sort of stuff.
stupidly interested in that, which is great. And I am too. Like,
Yeah.
I love seeing how other people work. There's something fascinating about it. But I think a big take back from Max as well was a lot of people were like, we all get together as creatives, which is one of my favorite things. But we all actually talk about our processes and what we do. But even though you don't necessarily understand, just say like the photographer's routine and their process, it's so interesting hearing what they're doing all the time.
Right.
So that was like a thing I think we talked about a lot over in Max this year, was our process and what we were doing. Yeah, I think people are just in general, if you, no matter what level of creativity or professionalism you're at, that's kind of, people are just love to see your process.
Are you ever overwhelmed by like having a chat to someone else about like all this stuff that they're doing in one direction? Like, wow, I'd really like to get into that, but that sounds like I need to clone myself.
Yeah,
to get that done.
I think that's the case with everybody. Like, there's so many things to learn and things to do that you have to kind of say, listen, you're doing good at what you're doing. You only have to focus on it. Otherwise, you can bring yourself into an early grave, I reckon, doing that all the time.
Yeah.
But like, you have to keep yourself curious too, right? I think that's important.
Yeah.
And being curious about kind of other people and what they're doing, and not just locking yourself completely into what you're doing all the time yourself, but actually like showing interest in what other creators are doing is
like being open-minded to new apps and new processes. And
definitely I probably wouldn't have included Fresco into my workflow because I was like, oh, another app. But since I've been using it about 6 months now because I got the pre-release with Adobe, and it's been game-changing since I've done it. So do you know what I mean? You have to kind of open your eyes a little bit sometimes to things that you think, oh no, I haven't got time for that. But like I said, it's so intuitive and kind of ready to use that it doesn't take as long sometimes to learn new tricks as well.
Yeah, you kind of have to make time for learning.
And I think
you
also have to keep up nowadays as well, right? Because there's always something new. And
there's so much. There's definitely so much.
Absolutely.
So
that was the export.
Should we check out the final?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
The final animation and what it looked like.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm just going to bring up my Instagram plug. So this was the final piece that I created, and it's obviously a little bit cleaner because I kind of had to tidy it up a little bit more. And then this is just super simple animation. I can't really call myself an animator, but it's just this little loop that just goes around. It just kind of adds that little bit more kind of character to the scene. Yeah. It just kind of takes away from the stillness of it. Just adds little simple things.
Absolutely.
I did another 2 as part of that series for it as well. So I did these, like, and this was kind of this was all about kind of like being filled up with inspiration while you're kind of there and kind of taking in everything and all the speakers and sounds
that's really
and talking
nice.
to everybody.
So is this done using the same technique?
Same technique, yeah. All done in Fresco and then brought into Photoshop for the final animation. So it's pretty simple. I just use timeline animation in Photoshop.
And they're just different steps in the timeline.
Basically, I draw out every layer. I'm a sucker for punishment. And then, but like, as you can see, there's not many layers there, Jim. I think the most was that walk cycle. That still wasn't even that much. And then I created final one, which was kind of like the inspiration that I'd taken from the event itself and the growths that I'd kind of taken from this. So the plant was to kind of symbolize the kind of growths that you've taken A after the year, and B after kind of talking to all these amazing people and hearing everybody talking about them in their industry. So that I thought it was nice to create them all as like this little 3-part series and all its little stamps and that's kind of one color I've been working in.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
It's absolutely amazing.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was fun. Those 3. It was always fun to work in that kind of flow as well when you kind of work in 2 different programs. Yeah. Be able to bring them across and then kind of finalize it in one then. And like everything's so compatible now. Do you remember before you used to have to go and export like a file type, and then kind of sometimes
Oh,
the
yeah.
layers would get all skewed, and you know what I mean, things would collapse by themselves and you'd lose things, whereas now PSD and then just airdrops directly over to your computer. So.
Airdrops, yeah, the unsung hero a lot of the time, I
Isn't it
think.
just?
It's
I've
pretty amazing.
recently just got an Android phone, and it's kind of changed the game a little bit because I'm like, oh, I can't airdrop that to my phone now. You know what I mean?
Oh, right, so you have to think about
So
that.
you have to go
work
around the other way, but like everything's, you've got so many different ways now, isn't there?
Mm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, that was cool. That was awesome. So where can people find your work? Let's plug Instagram so people can check out your work.
At Mark Conlan. And like as Ben said, you can find kind of everything else from Instagram. It's kind of the beast to feed, and then everything else trickles down off that. So I'm obviously trying to do everything at the same time, but it's just, again, it's so overwhelming, isn't it, to keep up with YouTube. Everyone's like, do YouTube videos and like keep up with your TikTok and do this, and I'm like, oh my god, it's just too many things to do, you know. I need more hours in a day. I need to be more like Demis.
Yeah.
You know.
Very good.
Yeah, so everything's there. You can find my website, and all my work is there at Mark Conlan.
Oh, that's awesome. Is there more animation in your future? This style?
Yeah, I think so. Like I enjoy doing. I originally studied animation in Ireland. That was kind of what I did in uni. I was never really great at it. I always liked the kind of still illustration side of it, but I never really knew it was kind of a viable path. So now that I've kind of found kind of what I want to do through the illustration, it's nice to bring some of the animation elements back into it and kind of do it through my own style. So it doesn't have to be technically amazing or, you know, technically beautiful. It just has to kind of work with my style.
Yeah.
I think so. You know, you can put a lot of pressure on yourself to do these things, but at the end of the day, you know, it just has to work with you and what you enjoy as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, super cool. Well, thanks for coming here. Thanks for taking us through Fresco. It's good to have you on Adobe Live.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
And thank you everyone for joining us. So we're signing out for a while, but we'll be back on Behance sometime soon. So thanks everyone.
Cheers, guys.